Tom calling in from England as well, that wants to talk about the argument from psychophysical harmony. So, hi, Tom. Are you using this argument to prove that God exists or to suggest that God exists?
Yeah, I think that this argument is at least very strong evidence for either like theism or like theism adjacent hypotheses. And so that's what I'll be.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, let's hear it. But I do want to say that we're kind of at the end of our show here, so we do need it to be wrapped up. We need to land the plane like in 2 to 3 minutes. Sure. Do you think you can do that?
Well, the argument very briefly states: 1, there is psychophysical harmony; 2, psychophysical harmony is expected on theism or theism adjacent hypotheses; 3, psychophysical harmony is surprising on atheistic naturalism; and 4, therefore we should update in favor of theism by Bayesian conditionalization. I can explain what psychophysical harmony means if you don't really know what I mean by that. Or I can go anywhere.
Please do.
Yeah, so psychophysical harmony is the fact that our phenomenological states and the physical states of the brain seem to match in a harmonious way. To give like a simple example, if I were to touch a hot stove, I would feel pain, and I would also display avoidance behavior, right? And so
Tom. Why is that surprising in the least? That doesn't surprise me at all under a view with natural selection evolution.
Yes, I can explain as to why natural selection I don't think is an adequate response. So natural selection, I'm sure you agree.
Tom, Tom, 1 second. The way that I understand your example here is that somebody touched a hot stove. When they touched that hot stove, the nerve endings, fired off, and messages traveled up to the brain, and it signaled pain in the brain. The brain is geared towards survival. That's part of our our survival instinct. And so, because that caused pain, and the pain signal got shot up to our brain, that signaled to our lizard brain, our very primal brain, oh, that's not good, don't do that thing. Where is God in this exactly? That's where I'm not seeing God.
It takes a bit of getting to the argument. What I want to just ask you guys first is, do you understand what I mean by a distinction between the functional characteristics of the brain and the phenomenological characteristics?
I get what you're saying about the functional characteristics in terms of the neurobiology of the brain, and the phenomenological characteristics in terms of what we experience in terms of our conscious awareness and our perceptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the examples that I use, I might talk about what's called a pain pleasure invert. The pain pleasure invert is a person whose functional behavior is exactly the same. So, if you take, you were mentioning evolution, the pain pleasure invert, they evolve in exactly the same way, because when presented with the same stimulus, they act in all the same ways, and so they survive in all the same ways. The only difference is the phenomenological character of their experience.
Yeah, so then here's how I would address that. I can very quickly shoot that down. You're kind of talking about a philosophical zombie where they don't necessarily have a conscious experience of the pain, but they still react in an advantageous way to the pain for their survival. So the issue here, right, is that there are actual reasons why it would be functionally advantageous to generate a conscious phenomenological experience of the pain rather than just a simple non-conscious stimulus and response. And that is because there's a whole lot more than just hot stoves that we have to deal with as living things. We have to deal with novel, dynamic, and unique stimuli that we have to process in a way that allows for long-term strategizing. And I'm just saying, consciousness is the most effective way to do that. Rather than the philosophical zombie that you're talking about, which would require a predetermined response for each potential stimulus set in the external environment, a conscious entity does not need those predetermined responses. All they need is a brain that is generating a subjective experience and a sense of self-preservation, which is energetically the most efficient way to get advantageous behavior without having to pre-program your responses. So that is the direct answer for why you would expect a convergence between the phenomenological and the actual objective state of things biologically, functionally in the brain and why those overlap and why that makes sense in an evolutionary worldview. There's your answer.
Yeah. So maybe I wasn't very clear. Like, just by stipulation, like the functional behaviors of this pain-pleasure invert are going to be the same, right? So they're the same causal
That's
laws.
impossible.
So we can get on to another argument as to whether or not that's possible or not, right? Like, I'm happy to address that objection. Right. So I'm happy to address the objection. I'm not sure why you think it's not possible, but if you want to explain that. Okay.
Yes, because you're basically saying that you could have the exact same response biologically without a conscious experience, but the conscious experience is being generated by the biology. So it's impossible for you to have you saying, "Oh, well, it's the exact same thing functionally." That's impossible. It cannot be the same thing functionally, but without the phenomenal. God, okay, without the subjective experience. Sorry, it is impossible to do those because you're saying oh well, this apple is red, but it doesn't emit any wavelengths of red color. It's no, that's an impossible state of affairs.
Yeah, can I just clarify something? So when you say that it's impossible, what type of possibility do you mean? Because I'm going to agree with you that it's phenomenologically impossible
Physical.
And probably metaphysically impossible. Well, I don't think
I'm talking about physical possibility.
By physical, do you mean the same as phenomenological, like keeping fixed the laws of nature or something like that?
But me saying that it's not physically possible, I'm saying that it's it's contradictory. Like you're saying that you can have a brain state without having a brain. That's not possible. It's physically impossible because the brain state is generated by the brain.
Right. Yeah, just to clarify, do you think it's physically impossible for pigs to fly?
No.
No. Okay. So I'm a little bit confused by what sort of possibility you mean. I'm just going to clarify what I mean whenever I talk about possibility. So for the entire argument, I'm only talking about epistemic possibility. That's the sort of possibility I mean, and the sorts of for all I know, or before I've discovered about certain things, before all I know. And so that allows, for variations in, the laws of nature, we can ask it would be possible in some sense that, the gravitational constant was different or something like that. Even though it might not sort of be possible by the laws of nature. And so by that sense of possibility, we can imagine a different set of psychophysical laws, so the psychophysical laws being the things that govern the causal relations between the functional and the phenomenological. And on a different set of psychophysical laws, it would be possible to have these pain-pleasure, right?
Are you just saying if the universe was different, it would be different? That's what I'm hearing.
I'm talking about possibility right now. So yeah, I'm saying it's possible.
I'll let John. He hasn't gotten in on this. But...
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really. Go ahead, Grayson.
I was when I'm hearing is when I'm saying it's impossible. I hope that you're understanding about my example with the red apple. If I'm telling you this apple is red, and then you look at the apple and there's absolutely no red frequency of light has anything to do with the apple, then it's impossible for that apple to be red. That's what I'm talking about. There's the phenomenological is the result of the physical states. They are generated by these physical systems. You can't have one without the other.
Wait. I agree that one is dependent on the other. I'm just saying that it's possible for the laws which govern that dependence to be different.
Okay, so if it's possible for the laws of the universe to be different, sure, I will get. If the laws of the universe would be different, then maybe consciousness would be different. That's not particularly shocking to me.
Well, no, look, it's just one part of a larger argument, right? That's great. I'm glad that we agree there. The argument basically, we've talked about what psychophysical harmony is. So a harmonious agent is one like ourselves. A disharmonious agent will be one which exists where the psychophysical laws are different. And when the psychophysical laws are different, it would touch hot stove. It would sort of feel great pleasure, but it would still functionally act as to pull its hand away. And, it would be sort of a very chaotic or perverse experience we'll be having. Okay, so we're very fortunate. We're in a harmonious universe where the, psychophysical laws make everything.
No, wait, we're not though, Tom. We're not. What you just described does happen. They're called mutations. You can have mutations to your pain sensors that are disadvantageous to where you would have a disadvantageous response. and that's fine. That's just there's variation in fitness distributions and populations.
Sorry, my claim isn't that every response is advantageous to survival or something. My claim is that almost all of our phenomenology is harmonious with the causes and the effects of the functions of our brain.
No, it's
not. Do you have examples of that doesn't happen?
No. It's not like we all the time there are stimuli that we perceive incorrectly. Like we don't perceive the true states of affairs. We perceive what is advantageous enough that is sufficient for our survival and reproduction.
I completely agree. So, I think in an illusion, we perceive something incorrectly. That's right. I'm not talking about harmony between the things in the world and what we see. I'm talking about harmony between the functions of our brain, how our brain processes that information, and how we phenomenologically experience that information. And I'm going to claim that in things like illusions, that harmony is maintained.
Oh, well, yeah, because, again, the subjective experience is being generated by the neurobiology. So why would it be shocking at all that there's a correlation? So then why is anything that you're saying surprising at all?
Well, so I'm just trying to firstly, there is psychophysical harmony. It seems like you're kind of fine with that. You agree that we have harmony between them. Then the second thing is that's not surprising on theism. I think you probably agree with that. I mean, we can argue about.
No, I totally disagree with that. I think that that's very, very surprising under theism, because under theism we're supposed to be souls. So why should anything about my soul has any impact on my brain? Why is it that if I change something about my brain, I can change something about who I am, my very soul? That doesn't make any sense under theism. Like, I would actually reject theism because of the psychophysical harmony that you're bringing up, because it shouldn't be harmonious under theism, because it should be harmonious with my immaterial soul, not my material brain.
Right. So firstly, I don't think that theism commits you to believing in souls. You don't have to believe that. But suppose that you do. You are a theist who believes in souls. The theist already has to. The theist believes that the soul is connected to the body in some special way, and that there are laws which govern this connection, and those laws are set up by God in some way. And so, God being a good being is likely to set up those laws in a harmonious way.
Which God?
Which God? I'm just a theist. I don't think that any specific God.
No, actually, Tom, I actually completely 100% disagree with what you just said, because, again, maybe this is not a criticism for general theism, but we don't live in a world full of general theists, right? We live in a world full of very specific theists that believe specific things, and 99% of them believe in souls. So I'm going to address what people actually believe. And what people actually believe is that God set up this world that has these laws of nature that then dictate our brains and how that works. But then they believe that there's something special, something immaterial that is not have anything to do with our neurobiology, and that's called free will. And the theists believe that we have free will, which breaks psychophysical harmony, because if you believe that we have free will in our psychosphere, we don't have it. Clearly, we don't have it in the neurobiology, which is a deterministic system. So, there is no psychophysical harmony if you are a theist who believes in free will, which the vast majority of them do. So it's actually an argument against God.
So I'm a theist and I believe in free will, but the kind of free will I believe in one is compatible with determinism. I'm broadly compatibilist. I'm not going to defend what other people believe. I'm also not going to defend other religions. I spend a lot of time arguing with religious people. I'm very happy for you to make criticisms of those views. I think lots of them are wrong. But I don't think that these criticisms apply to my view.
So why do you think that psychophysical harmony, because again, this is 100% expected in my view as an atheist. I would actually be shocked if there wasn't psychophysical harmony. That would really shock me, and that would actually make me believe in an immaterial reality if that was the case. So then why is it that I hear your exact same argument and it fits perfectly in my atheistic worldview, and I think it debunks your own worldview? How is that possible?
Okay, so I think we should maybe address the third premise of this argument, which seems to be the controversial one, which is that psychophysical harmony is surprising on atheistic naturalism. The idea is broadly that there are infinitely many different possible sort of pairings or mappings between the physical and the psychological states.
No, there aren't. So I reject that wholeheartedly.
If you want to quibble about infinities, we can just say a very large number.
I also reject that, though. I reject that entire claim. There's literally only one phenomenological state that could possibly correspond with the current physical state of my brain. There's not an infinite possibility of that.
Again, when I talk about possibility, I'm talking about epistemic possibilities of possibilities of if the psychophysical laws are different. We talked about pain, pleasure, invert, where...
Okay, well, I'm talking about real possibilities because we live in the real world, Tom. Let's talk about real possibilities. We live in reality. Let's talk about what's really possible.
Well, I'm trying to make an argument, and if you just let me finish the argument, then maybe it'll make more sense. So I think, how this works basically is there's a question which is prior to say knowing what the psychophysical laws were set up as, what should you expect them to be if you are an atheistic naturalist? And so
I would have no expectation.
Right, so I think that you have an expectation of everything, and I can give an argument for that if you want me to.
I literally would not have... Yeah, sorry.
Well, we're here at the end of the show. So, I mean, we do have one other caller to get to. So, let's try to stick to the one bullshit claim that you're making instead of bringing in yet another bullshit claim. And I do say that this is a bullshit claim because I've been sitting here and I've been listening to all of this, really taking it in, really soaking it in, listening to the conversation. And what I'm hearing is that on your end, Tom, you're saying that there's some kind of magicalness to this connection between the physical and this I can't pronounce the word, the other state. Basically, that one. Basically the physical part of your brain is somehow magically connected to your consciousness or your the mind, I guess you would say. Normally people refer to this as the mind body problem, and typically whenever I've run into it, and I find that the mind body problem isn't really so much a problem because theism, as Grayson pointed out, stipulates souls existing. There's one particular state that our brains are in, and there's not an infinite number of different states that it could be in or whatever. And so the problem of the fact that when you change the physical state of your brain, then it produces changes to the mind portion of your brain. There's several different studies that have been going on, and maybe I'm totally down on the wrong alley. Maybe y'all can correct me if I'm misunderstanding this entire argument. But if you make physical changes to your brain, you change the physical structure of your brain or the neurochemistry of your brain, then your mind is going to work differently. You can even have a different personality if you change the physical structure of your brain. Phineas Gage, I believe, is a really good example of this. He took a railway spike to the brain and it, changed his personality. If God or souls or something magical about us inhabited us instead of just the mind being an emergent property of a complex central nervous system, then it seems to me the physical structure of a brain shouldn't matter. I mean, I feel like you're arguing in reverse there, Tom. Is that what's happening here, or am I just misunderstanding your argument completely?
No, I agree with most of what you're saying. This is an argument for souls. We're saying there's something mysterious. I agree that there's a very strong connection between the physical things and phenomenological things. I think it's a causal connection, but the exact details of that aren't especially important for the argument. The claim that I'm trying to make about why this is all surprising on atheism is basically something there are some laws which govern these connections, and that those laws are surprising in that the laws could have been any number of ways in an epistemic possibility sense. And on atheism, there's no reason to expect them to be in a harmonious way. And on theism, there is a reason for them to be in a harmonious way. And so that we, have some data that's predicted by
this
theism,
is just presuppositionalism.
It sounds like it's fine-tuning to me. It sounds like it's fine-tuning of the brain.
Right. Yeah.
So,
no, and it's presupposition. You're presupposing. Hold on. You're presupposing that God must exist because physics governs our brains. God. Well, no. What I'm saying is that physics is what governs our brains. Like like neurochemistry, like the laws of chemistry, the laws of physics are the things that are governing like what happens in our brains. And so, because of that, that's totally expected on a universe without a god, because nature just operates without some supernatural wizard there to force it to operate. Nature doesn't require fucking Merlin to sit there and turn the gears, right? So like it's totally unexpected on theism, on your brand of theism, I guess, for this psychophysical harmony or whatever to exist, because there has to, under your definition of it, there has to be some kind of magical connection there, whether it's like, God casting an incantation over our meat bags or some other kind of thing. Like, you require magic to be part of your argument. You have to presuppose that this magician is there to cast the magical incantation. So like, there's nothing on atheism that suggests that it can't happen. Like and I say on atheism, I just mean on the idea that God doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't think it's magic at all. I think that on theism, if there is this connection, the connection is the same sort of connection as it will be on atheism. It's basically a law of nature. I'm just calling it a psychophysical law for simplicity. But you can refer to it how you want to. You can talk about neurobiology as well.
Okay. So you're saying that it's the law of nature that governs this harmony. Hold on, Tom. So you're saying it's a law of nature that governs this harmony that's there. Let's assume that there's a harmony there or whatever. And so it's a law of nature, and therefore you're just ad hoc tacking on a wizard there to make the laws of nature work. I feel like that's what the argument is.
Not quite. I mean, like, before it was mentioned that this argument is very like a design argument, and I think that's right. I think this is basically like, as kind of mentioned, like it's a bit like a design argument for the brain. But the reason I prefer this argument to the design argument is I just think it has a bunch of benefits over it. But if maybe that gives you a better idea of what I'm trying to establish.
What is the difference between the psychophysical argument, the psychoharmony or whatever argument that you're making? What's the difference between that and fine tuning? It literally sounds like it's the exact same argument. You're saying, there has to be some of these laws of nature that give rise to conscious experience eventually down the line, and that like those laws of nature could have been all of these possible different ranges of different laws. And so why do we have the one that gives rise to consciousness? Like, that's the exact same argument as fine tuning.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very similar argument. And I know you had a call on the fine tuning argument earlier. The difference is basically that against the fine tuning argument, I think the multiverse is like quite a reasonable thing that you can say. But when you talk about psychophysical harmony, even if there were a multiverse, the majority of agents in the universe, by a long way, would be disharmonious agents, because the universe would produce disharmonious sets of psychophysical laws, and so it still would be surprising that we find ourselves in a harmonious universe.
And again, I just want to just clarify here that you are assuming that you can have disharmonious psychophysical laws. Like I don't even know how that's possible.
Yeah, epistemic possibility, and I think it's pretty clear.
Your epistemic possibility is completely meaningless to me. I'm talking about physical possibilities, right? Like, I don't care if somebody's trying to argue. If somebody's trying to argue that like God is epistemically real but not physically real, I don't care. Is he physically real? Does he actually exist?
All the premises in the argument only ever refer to epistemic possibility. The argument relies on Bayesian updating, and Bayesian probabilities work on epistemic probabilities. Doesn't have anything to do with what's physically probable or possible.
Yeah, but you don't have any basis to make any of those probabilities. Like, if I actually went through you and say, what's the probability of this? You claim that you're using Bayesian analysis, but then when I ask you, what basis do you have to form any of these probabilities? You don't actually. You don't actually have any firm ground to stand on when I ask you, why are these probabilities the numbers that they are?
Right. So the conclusion of the argument is just that we should update a lot in favor of theism. Now, you might think that
we haven't gotten to the conclusion, Tom. We haven't gotten to the conclusion of your argument. You said you were using Bayesian reasoning, which involves like different probabilities of your different like premises that you're adding up, right, to then have your conclusion. So, like, how can you say with any certainty or any basis at all in any way, what are the probabilities of psycho-harmonious laws or psychophysical or not harmonious laws, that nobody knows what these are. Nobody can tell me what are these psychoharmonious laws. You are assuming that they exist. You're assuming that they could be different. The amount of assumptions are just multiplying exponentially for you to make this argument.
Yeah, so to be clear, I mean, like, there's a lot of views on how the relationship between the mind and the body works and the philosophy of mind, and I'm just using one word to paper over it all because I think the argument works, whatever one you assume, but I'm happy to go into the details as to what these might be. In terms of like what the probabilities are, of course, I don't think that I'm going to give you an exact number. Like, it's a 50% chance if theism is true that we would have psychophysical harmony, but you can make very clear comparisons. So, on theism, there's like very natural reasons to expect that this was what God would want. On atheism, you have no reason.
No, there's not.
One set of laws out of an infinite number of laws.
No.
There really isn't.
You're ad hoc saying that it's not expected on atheism, and you're ad hoc saying that it's totally expected on theism. Maybe you can make an argument that isn't ad hoc, maybe, but we don't have time for that tonight. We've been on the call for 25 minutes, and so we do need to get to our last caller for the night so that we can read the super chats. Okay.
No worries. Thanks for your time. I'd love to call another time if you'll have me.
Yep, definitely will. You're perfectly fine. So please feel free to call in again.
All right. Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye. Oh my God, that was a tiresome call. Like, I don't know. I'm walking away from it thinking, oh, he's just ad hoc stating, oh, atheism can't explain this, but theism totally can. And then, using presuppositional type of logic to just say, oh, well, God has to exist in order for us to even experience this kind of thing. I don't know. What did you think that I was like wrong in my understanding at any point during the call there, Grayson? Because I felt like I was just sort of shooting in the dark sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, the whole psychophysical harmony argument is like just a weird one to wrap your head around. I think it's one of the weaker arguments I know of for God's existence, but I have heard it before from like similar people that get really turned around in philosophy and metaphysics. And then they think that they can prove that because something's like, I don't know, epistemically possible, somehow that has any bearing on its physical possibility. But really, I think the key thing with every time I hear a theist try to make a Bayesian argument, it's always like, okay, well, tell me how you arrive at the probabilities, because you have to be putting in some kind of numbers to be getting a conclusion if you're talking like you're using Bayesian analysis. And he was like, oh, well, notice what he said. He said, I can't give you a specific numbers like 50% or whatever. But he's like, just saying, oh, well, it feels like it's more likely under theism and it feels like it's less likely under atheism. And we never actually got any sort of rigorous argument for why those probabilities are what they are. Like, he just said, well, think about it, like all the different possibilities. It's like, it's not what is the basis for any of this. Like, he doesn't even know. He doesn't even know what any of these psychophysical harmonious laws are, because we don't have any. Those are made up things. And they're saying, well, maybe eventually we'll have a law of physics that tells us about, oh, this is how consciousness arises. And it's an equation. It's a physical law. It's like, okay, great, buddy. But don't tell me about the fine tuning of physical laws that we don't even have yet, that literally don't even exist yet. We don't know what these laws are. And he's trying to tell me they're fine tuned.
Yeah. That's why it seemed very ad hoc to me, is going back to what you said, is that he just feels like it's more likely, to be this way, or feels more likely to be the other way. When you're working with like Bayesian reasoning, I mean, you're going to have, good reasons for picking a certain, even if you want to describe it in English, like the mathematical portions of it, like saying that it's more likely. Okay, why is it more likely? Like, you're going to have a justification for saying that it's more likely. And so, but whenever a theist brings up Bayesian analysis to prove God in some kind of way, or prove some kind of argument for God, it's really easy to tell where they go off the rails in their analysis, because typically what I see whenever a theist tries to go down that road is that they put high value on God existing already. And so like they come to all of their conclusions under the understanding God is more likely to exist. So it's basically like, it's a circular argument. I'm going to prove that God exists by saying that it's more likely that God exists. That makes more sense because I want God to exist. Therefore, God exists. It's just this big circular argument that they chase their tails around in.
Hey there, everyone. We want you to check out our live shows 6 days a week, 6 shows a week, 5 days a week, 6 shows. And also there are other channels coming. And this part is meaningless, but you could support this channel by watching the live shows, by checking out another episode. Tell the algorithm you want to stay here. You're not going to go off to some video of some super rich guy committing war crimes. You're going to stick around here and maybe you'll leave a comment, or what else could they do, Eve?
They could head over to patreon.com/calltheline, right? Am I looking?
That's another thing. And they could
right, yeah.
And they could subscribe. No, you got it right. I got it wrong the first time.
And they could also comment. Yeah.